Hi, my name's Kathryn Whitney, and I'm the Artistic Director of Sing the North, the Canadian Virtual Choir. I also run One World Baroque together with my colleague Daniel Taylor. I want to say thank you to Marilyn Walovic for asking me to do this BCCF short. I'm really pleased to take part in this. And I want to say a special thanks to the members in the executive and the board of the BC Choral Federation. You've all done so much work over the last year and a half to keep choral singing alive and to keep all of us connected. It's really made a massive difference. So thank you all very much. I've spent much of the last year and a half immersed in virtual choirs. A totally new experience for me, just like it has been for so many of my colleagues and singers. It's been, in some ways, obviously a very challenging year. We miss a lot, and a lot of difficult things have happened. But for me personally, working with virtual choirs has been enormously rewarding, musically as well as personally. It's been some of the most touching music that I've made for lots of reasons. One of the things that singing in a virtual choir has brought to the fore, I think, for a lot of singers is that strange experience of singing alone. So they participate in a virtual choir. They meet you on Zoom. They come to your rehearsals. We go on, in Sing the North, we go on field trips together. We have social events together as well. But they miss that blanket, the big hug of the other voices around them, especially when they're at the end of a project, when it comes to that special time when it's just them and their score and their backing track, and they're singing their song, their particular part, as it were, kind of by themselves. I think a lot of singers find that it makes them feel a little bit more like a soloist. You know, you can feel quite exposed. And I've heard more than one person say that it makes them feel like they just have that one note and they really miss that big hug of the chord. For my BCCF short, I want to talk about what I call the choral mouthful. The choral mouthful is the chord that you make on your own every single time you sing a note. So normally when we think of a chord, of course, we think we contribute one note. Say this one. I contribute that note. Somebody else contributes this note. Somebody else comes in. And then maybe. So you get this really nice chord. But actually, each of those notes individually also is a chord. Let me show you what I mean. Now for this bit, I'm using a program called VoceVista Video. You can download it free from the internet, although as usual, there's a paid version too. I'm going to use it to show you what the chord looks like that we just sang. In this case, I'm going to play it on the piano. Here's the first note. Now you see there's one note at the bottom, this line, this horizontal line that's a little bit bigger and a little bit brighter and thicker than the notes that are above it. This is your fundamental note, or the one that you detect most with your ear. But actually, all those other notes above it are also present. So this note here, for example, is that A on the keyboard. This note here is the A above. The next one up is the E above, and then so on. It goes all the way up the overtone series. So that note on its own is a kind of chord. It has the basic note, but then it has other notes above it that we would think of harmonic notes, octaves, fifths, and so on. When you add the other notes in the chord that we just sang, it would look like this. So that looks like quite a rich chord, doesn't it, played by a piano? Let's see what a chord is like when it's played, the same notes played on the organ. That looks even richer, doesn't it? Well, the organ has far more overtones, so you get that really wonderful, rich sound. You can see them here. Those lines, those horizontal lines, represent overtones in the higher series that we hear, just because of the acoustics of that instrument. So that sounds pretty complex, doesn't it? Let's see what that sounds like if a voice is sung over top of it. We win. Singers have the most complex sounds of all. Look at, this is my fundamental note here that I sang. That's the E above the see, but actually I have a much, much richer overtone series than does the organ or certainly the piano. Well, what does this mean for singers? Well, first of all, it's good news that we have such wonderful, rich voices. We're singing a chord literally all the time. But you're singing much more than a chord. You're singing vowels. And vowels themselves can be tuned. They can be in tune or out of tune. And that's the case because vowels, just like a pitch, have frequencies. So one of the things that makes the difference between an E vowel and an ah vowel, of course, is the position of your tongue. But the position of your tongue changes, and so too do the frequencies that are emphasized by that vowel. And that's going to impact your tuning. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to sing you some vowels on the same pitch. So the pitch remains constant. It's just the vowel, the position of the tube, the tongue and things moving around that changes. I'm going to show you how that changes the tuning of your own chord. So do you see how that moves? If I move that over, you can see it a little bit more from E to E to A to O to U. See, there are some vowels, the E, for example, where the highlighted overtones are really right up at the top of the spectrum, and there's a bit in the middle that's actually missing. The opposite is the case with U at the very end, where the highlighted overtones are at the lower range and the upper part is missing. In the middle, we have the E vowel, where there's a wider range across the top, and then a little bit of lightness in the middle. And in the E, E, A, the brighter notes were a little bit lower. Even though we have upper harmonics, there's a little bit of quietness in those middle harmonics. So why is that important? Well, because how you tune your own chord, your single pitch with all of those notes above it, your chord, doesn't just impact your own chord and its pitching, but it impacts the entire choral sound. We want you to match those other singers as they're singing their vowel. We want whatever chord you're singing to have the same clear vowel throughout whatever note you happen to be holding together. If it's pure, you'll get a much, much more profound expression of those overtones. If it's impure, however, you'll feel the movement from that pure sound to a less pure sound, a much pitchier sound. I'll show you what I mean. So I've just sung an E followed by an I. And if we're singing a high note on the vowel E, sometimes it's hard to put our tongue in the right position. So we might sing instead of E, but look how it changes our own personal overtone series. It brings that bright resonant overtones, the resonant overtones down. And it means that we're not going to be ringing in the same way as our neighbors, or especially in the other parts. So one of the other things that we can do is just move really quickly between vowels. Not only do we get that nice clean change of overtones, but we also don't get the kind of messy overtones that shouldn't really be here in that chord. We hear overtone singers demonstrating how those little overtones can really jump out at you. And you can try this at home. The best thing to do is just sing really, really low in the bottom part of your range, and then move from one vowel to another really slowly. You'll see that, especially it's going to be demonstrated here at the top of the spectrum, you'll see that you can play with those overtones. It's fun to do, but you really don't want to be doing it when you're singing in a chord in choir. Here we go. So that little pattern that I made at the top, I'm just making by moving the front of my tongue back and forth. We want your tongue to be nice and relaxed and in the same position. You can see if it's not, that it's going to be messing up things quite a bit. So that's my little short about tuning the choral mouthful. I hope you find that interesting and it helps you with your singing. whether you're there with your own choir or with the choir involving everyone else.